Hello and welcome. We're at the ambassador's residence here in Washington, D.C. This is apparently the oldest building that the Indian government bought anywhere in the world, way back in 1945. And with me, the man of the moment, the Indian ambassador to the United States, Taranjit Singh Sandhu. Sandhu Saab, welcome and congratulations on a very successful state visit. In the way that you would have planned things, were you able to get most of what you wanted done? When you look back at this visit, what stands out to you as being most significant?
Uh, Rahul, I think we did speak before the visit, and I had told you, and I remember you had a bit of a questioning smile that will it happen? And I told you that both as far as ceremonial side is concerned and the substantive side is concerned, things will happen. And I think things have happened much more than even I would have expected. But it is in line
In
with.
what ways do you think the visit has over-delivered on your expectations?
Uh, let's start with the ceremonial part. Uh, you know, the Prime Minister arrived, it was raining heavily, but still they did the ceremonial welcome even at the airport. Then, come down that very day, you saw a very effective Skills for All program where the First Lady came. And I don't know how much you were able to pay attention, but included in those were two young Indian kids. A girl who's actually doing research on developing technology for blind people. So it has a people's touch. The second, the boy, he is doing research on helping, the coastal belt, actually the fishermen. So there were dimensions which were touching people. And similarly, the community colleges here, other experts, they came in. This was held at the National Science Foundation thing. And the First Lady was present throughout.
The other thing that stood out as interesting is just the amount of time the two principals, the American president and the Indian prime minister, got to spend with each other. How does this compare with visits in the past?
Well, I did indicate to you then, and if we actually look at it, it certainly was historic. It hasn't happened like this. On all 3 days, the Prime Minister was here. On all 3 days, he and President Biden met at White House. And each of those interactions were substantial. In fact, on the second day, perhaps the entire day, a number of times they.
Is it usually like this?
No, it doesn't happen like this, but it is a reflection, as I had indicated to you, both the importance of India and the importance of Prime Minister for the American.
Now, the India-America relationship has been on an upward trajectory for a while, but some of the terms we've been hearing used by people in the Biden administration, used by political scientists over here, seems to be suggesting that they're elevating India to a higher plane than earlier. And in some senses, this is America taking a bold bet on the India story.
I would actually draw your attention to the word which has been used, and people often ignore it. We talk of alliance, allies, partnership, and it is reflective of the kind of cooperation, collaboration which is possible, which is actually has helped to change the thinking. It's a process, and I will not say that it has happened overnight, but if you want to use American parlance and you say that America is betting on India, yes, actually, if we look at President Biden's old statements when he was a senator or when he was a vice president, and you dig them out now, you will see that India was an important aspect. But coming to the present, I think in the complicated international order, and particularly when we are just coming out of COVID, I think the 5 areas which I had mentioned to you that time, you just need to look at the joint statement and you will see concrete results. Just like what I had indicated to you earlier. So you will have on defense and strategic, you will have on healthcare, you will have on IT digital startup, ISET, you will have on renewables, you will have on education and knowledge partnership.
So let's take technology, which seems to have been at the center of most of the initiatives in different spheres. Where do we see all these private companies that were there at that big tech handshake take the India story from here? One is for governments to give them the stage, bring all the big boys of tech together. The other is for them to enhance what they're already doing and double down on the India story.
So firstly, when we say they interacted, the interaction was on substantial issues. We should not miss that. So as you said, tech handshake. I have been repeatedly saying that this is actually, technology has not only a commercial side, but an important strategic side. And trust and confidence are the base of technology. So when today we have cross-cutting technology, whether it is in defense, whether it is in IT, digital, I said technology is very much there. Even in education and skill development. Look, Google, many of the top companies, semiconductor companies are actually opening up. There is announcement on that. So this is, tech is an important element of this relationship, and it cuts across in all the 5 areas which I have mentioned to you. So when these big, firstly, the big tech guys don't normally come for meetings like that, you know. So we had the tech handshake, which both Prime Minister Modi and President Biden attended, participated, had the top of the line people, both from US side and the Indian side. And there, actually, and this was led from US side by their IT minister, which is actually Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, who has been very bullish on India. We have seen her public comments, and both the leaders were present, and each of these tech leaders spoke on different areas. But also keep in mind, we also had important startups, and these startups are very much integrated in their system, including in the defense system, and many of them are also starting to manufacture as reliable supply partners in the US production system. So that's why it is significant.
Here's what I want you to do, Ambassador. Tell us something we don't know outside of what we saw on camera in those private moments. For example, at the state dinner, I heard an interesting story about Anand Mahindra and Mr. Wadhwani and some of the other people talking about wanting to start a band and perform over there. So tell us some of the color, the highlights that weren't seen on camera.
So, Rahul, I think you know these better than me. So perhaps I should ask you what was happening. I was more focused. But as you said, the first day, that what was a private and a personal dinner was very significant. I think the leaders spoke. Of course, the chemistry was well known. You saw the photographs. You saw First Lady Jill Biden also present there. But this big banquet dinner, the state dinner, again, despite the weather, it had 400 plus people present. And who's who? Look, the list is out in Washington Post and New York Times, so I don't have to elaborate in that. So in that, there was, I can tell you that people were interacting with each other. So the 2 or 3 whom you saw or who may have shared with you, there were many others. The top of US cabinet was there. The academicians were there, the CEOs were there, the top fashion designers were there. There is an article here of actually Biden administration's outreach to the top fashion when the Indian Prime Minister is there. So this kind of speculation certainly, but again, I think what is significant is the messaging that goes. And the messaging is that United States and India are strong partners, and this is a futuristic relationship I'm talking about. And again, we come back to, you look at any of the areas, any of them, just scratch it, and you look at the joint statement which has come out, you will see concrete. And we are not talking in terms of just a visibility factor, but actual concrete achievements. Now, if we take ISET, for example, you know, NSA came here only in January. And Sullivan, the US NSA, was there a few days back. And you can already see the movement. So definitely there is excitement around. And the private sector, by their huge presence, both particularly the US private sector, has given an indication that they are very bullish on India.
You know, you mentioned the New York Times and the Washington Post. In the American media, there have been questions about the need for the Biden administration to push back harder on human rights, etc. Now, this issue apparently was taken up in the private conversation as well, and there was that reporter from the Wall Street Journal who asked a question on this, which the Prime Minister answered. Do you think that issue is, to the extent possible, now settled, or will this continue to fester in the relationship between India and the United States?
See, the people who want to make a big show about it will continue saying. I think the Prime Minister was very clear. First, there was a huge speculation whether there will be questions, will, etc., etc. But I think the Prime Minister was very clear. And I think the President also mentioned about it. And as far as India's diversity is concerned, it's for all to see. I can mention to you, Rahul, that on April 14th, I did an event in India House where about 1,000 Indian Americans from different areas came. The Commerce Secretary and our Finance Minister were the chief guests. Top White House officials were here. And I can tell you, many of the Americans were surprised that we were celebrating 15 festivals. So within 2 days, we have 15 festivals in India. So there is so much of the diversity element in India that, you know, like, look at the speech of the Prime Minister in the US Congress. You know, when he spoke in numbers, there was a different expression, even on 2,500 political parties. You know.
Sure.
So I think we are proud of our diversity, and I don't see any reason for us to be concerned.
So, what happens on the Predator deal, which was spoken of but not finalized? GF 414 deal has been announced. By when will some of these engines now be made in India?
So on specifics, I think the experts will speak, but the significance of this and others is that US is willing to share the technology. I think that's the big
Is there an indication of sharing of technology beyond just these jet engines on critical technology in the defense sector?
Look, as I told you, tech is a cross-cutting area. So obviously, any part of tech also has a defense side, and we have to look at. You just used about drones. You are speaking about that. Even in that, if you look, there is a commitment about establishing, you know, MRO facility in India, and actually that will spur skill development. So these things don't happen overnight.
Sure.
I mean, we have a huge skilled manpower, but that manpower needs to be appropriately trained so that it's not only a force for India, US, but as the Prime Minister said, force for global good.
Well, you've had a very busy build up to this visit. The Prime Minister has finally gone to Cairo and beyond. You can unwind and spend some time. Thank you very much. One of the key challenges, of course, now, Ambassador, is to maintain the momentum of this visit. This visit may be an event which forces some action, but we are heading into election cycles in both countries. So sustaining the momentum when the principles aren't there will be one of the big challenges from here.
So, you use the word build up. I would say this was the reality. It's just that people are becoming more conscious of it. So you are very right. Look, I think the fact that the private sector, I said, is bringing government, private sector, academics all together. I think that itself will have the energy. And if you really take a look at the way our relationship has been developing, again, elections and beyond. I was here when the administration changed, and I know in the media all the kind of speculation. So, look, you have seen Prime Minister Modi's equation with President Obama, you have seen it with President Trump, now you are seeing it with President Biden. So, the India-US relationship, and here I may also add, look at the address to the US Congress. All the four leaders came together and signed. And again, I used to always say that look at the 2016 YouTube. Please look at the 2023 YouTube, and you will see how bipartisan clapping, cheering, the way the speech has been taken. And if we look at the interviews given by the congressmen, the comments made by them, I think it is quite visible that there is a bipartisan approach to India. So I am confident that this relationship will keep going much beyond.
And the message that India is sending is that it's not about China. This is not in response to what China is doing. This is India and America coming together for a shared, prosperous future, not necessarily linked at that unsaid gorilla in the room.
Absolutely. Look, do keep in mind that we have 4 million Indian Americans here, very, very successful. Even in that tech handshake, there were Indian American CEOs, but Americans.
Of course.
I think today, and Rahul, you can check with anyone, if on a board there is an Indian American, and I can tell you out of the 5 top people, definitely 2 are Indians, the value of the shares go up. Doctors, again, look across the top health experts in Biden administration. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, the drug czar Gupta, the COVID czar Jha, all of them Indian Americans. So I think we know the ability of Indian Americans when they come here, and we know the energy that Indians have, particularly the young.
No.
So therefore,
And I think their role is also very critical in just giving fuel to this relationship and pushing it forward. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sandhu, for joining us here. This is a lovely house. I don't know, it's the oldest house India ever bought anywhere in the world once we started thinking about independence.
well, maybe the MEA spokesman will be better placed to say. I think it's one of the oldest. It's actually about 110 years old. And we bought it in 1945, before the independence of India. Actually, the first mission, which was established under Dominion status, this house was bought at that time.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for having us here, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, sir. Thank
Wish
you.
you well.